On the distant planet of Krazer, where two suns painted the sky in gold and red, a massive training arena stood in the heart of the alien military base. The ground trembled with every step of armored soldiers. Thousands of alien warriors stood in formation, waiting for their legendary commander, Colonel Varkon. His tall, scaled body gleamed under the bright light. His eyes burned with pride, and his voice echoed across the training field. "We, the Krazarians, are born for war. Our strength is unmatched. And humans," he paused, his tone filled with disgust, "are nothing but fragile creatures who depend on luck and emotion." The crowd of aliens roared with laughter. They had seen videos of humans, small and soft compared to their muscular frames. To them, humans were a joke. But not everyone laughed. In the corner of the arena, one human stood quietly, wearing a simple combat suit. His name was Captain Rain Carter of Earth's Defense Corps. His calm eyes watched the crowd without fear. He had seen this kind of pride before. He had seen it fall before. When the laughter settled, the Alien Council member announced, "Today, for the first time, a human will face our top warrior in the great trial of honor." The word spread like fire. Everyone turned to see the human. Varkon folded his arms. "This must be some kind of joke," he said. "A human wants to fight my best student." The council confirmed it. The challenge was official. The colonel's student, Kaeldar, stepped forward. He was taller than Varkon, his body covered in dark green armor, his arms lined with glowing veins of power. Kaeldar smirked. "So you're the one they sent from Earth," he said. "I expected someone stronger." Rain didn't respond. He only adjusted his gloves and walked to the center of the arena. The crowd went wild again, chanting Kaeldar's name. From the stands, Varkon watched closely, confident his student would end this human's foolish pride in seconds. The arena floor shimmered with light as the energy shields activated. The match was ready to begin. "This is your last chance to walk away human," Kaeldar warned. "If you fight me, I won't hold back." Rain simply nodded. "Good," he said softly. "Neither will I." The signal horn sounded. Kaeldar moved first, fast, almost invisible. His foot hit the ground like thunder as he launched forward. The audience gasped. But Rain didn't move. He tilted his head slightly, and Kaeldar's strike missed his shoulder by an inch. The colonel's grin faded a little. Kaeldar attacked again, faster this time, with a spinning kick charged with energy. Rain blocked it with his arm, sliding back but still standing. The crowd went silent. No human should have survived that hit. Rain looked calm, breathing steady, eyes locked on his opponent. Kaeldar growled and attacked again, sending a storm of punches and kicks, each faster than before. But Rain kept dodging. Every move was precise, measured, and quiet. It was as if he had trained for this moment his entire life. Varkon's smile vanished completely. He leaned forward, whispering, "Impossible." Kaeldar's pride began to shake. "Fight me properly," he roared. He powered up, his body glowing red with alien energy. The ground cracked under his feet as he charged again. Rain lowered his stance, waiting for the right moment. Then, as Kaeldar swung, Rain stepped inside the attack and hit a single punch, clean, fast, silent. It wasn't even strong enough to hurt Kaeldar badly, but it made him stumble back 2 steps. The crowd gasped louder than before. Varkon's face hardened. "He's just lucky," he muttered. But deep down, something else stirred out. Rain adjusted his stance, saying nothing. His calmness unnerved everyone. He looked like a soldier who had seen too many wars to be afraid of one more. Kaeldar growled, his arrogance fading. He attacked again, desperate to crush the human. The air shook with energy as the alien launched a final strike, but Rain moved just in time. His counterpunch landed straight into Kaeldar's chest plate. The impact echoed across the arena. Kaeldar slid backward, knees bending slightly, gasping for breath. The once cheering crowd went quiet. No one had ever made Kaeldar move like that, not even Varkon. Rain didn't follow up. He stood still, letting the silence speak for him. "Is that all?" he asked softly. His words, though calm, hit harder than any weapon. Varkon's eyes blazed with anger. "He's mocking us," he growled. But he couldn't deny what he saw. For the first time, the proud Krazer warriors looked at a human not with laughter, but with uncertainty. The colonel's pride, built over years of victories, began to crack. The signal horn sounded again, marking the end of the first round. Kaeldar stood panting, glaring at the human who hadn't even broken a sweat. Rain turned and walked back to his corner, his expression unreadable. The crowd began whispering among themselves. How can a human move like that? Is he using alien tech? No, he's just fast. Varkin's hand tightened around the rail. This isn't over, he said through gritted teeth. But deep down, a small voice in his mind whispered the truth. This human was different. As the sun set behind the arena, casting long shadows over the ground, the next round was announced. The world of Crozzer had just witnessed something it would never forget. A human standing against alien pride without fear. The challenge had only begun, but the legend was already forming. The twin suns of Crozzer dipped low over the alien horizon, painting the arena in shades of red and violet. The crowd buzzed with unease, their proud laughter from earlier replaced with whispers and tension. No one expected the human to last this long. The great trial of honor had never seen anything like this before. Colonel Varkon stood with his arms crossed, his jaw tight, his pride bruised, but not yet broken. His best student, Kaeldar, stood in the center of the arena, chest heaving, energy still pulsing from his veins. Across from him, Captain Rain Carter stood calm and steady, the faint wind brushing across his short brown hair. His breathing was slow, controlled, his eyes fixed on Kaeldar with the same quiet focus as before. The announcer's voice echoed through the arena. Round 2 began. Kaeldar didn't wait. He roared and charged forward, the ground cracking beneath his feet. His movements were a blur of glowing light and raw power. The air shimmered around him as he swung his blade, in a sweeping arc aimed straight for Rain's chest. But Rain moved like water, flowing out of the path of destruction, his body bending and twisting just enough to avoid the strike. The alien crowd gasped again. They had never seen anyone dodge Kaeldar like that. The blade cut through empty air and left a trail of sparks. Kaeldar growled, furious. "Stop dodging, human," he shouted, his pride boiling over. He swung again and again, faster and stronger each time, his blade flashing like lightning. But Rain didn't fight back. He studied every strike, every pattern. His mind was analyzing, adapting, calculating. He could see the rhythm in Kaeldar's rage, the small openings that came when emotion took control. Then, finally, Rain struck back. Just one clean movement, a side step and a sharp elbow to Kaeldar's side. The alien stumbled backward, his breath forced out in a grunt. The sound of shock rippled through the arena like a storm. Even Varkin's eyes widened. The human had not only survived, he was winning through patience. Kaeldar wiped a drop of blue blood from his lip, his pride burning hotter than his power. "You mock me with your silence," he hissed. Rain's reply was calm. "No, I respect your strength. That's why I'm not wasting mine." The words hit harder than any punch. Varkon slammed his fist on the railing. "Enough talk. End him, Kaeldar. Show them what it means to be Crozzerian." The alien student roared again, his armor glowing brighter, his body surrounded by a red aura. He activated his advanced combat form, something even elite soldiers rarely used. The ground began to shake. Dust rose in clouds around him as he launched himself into the air, coming down like a meteor. The impact sent waves of energy outward, throwing sand and stone across the arena. The force hit Rain hard, but he rolled with it, his training saving him from a broken bone. He got to his feet, breathing heavier now, but still steady. His eyes glowed faintly blue as his combat suit activated its kinetic shield, a human invention designed for survival, not power. The crowd murmured, realizing this was no ordinary human soldier. Kaeldar came again, faster than before. The two clashed, alien strength against human precision. Every hit Kaeldar threw was filled with rage and power. Every dodge from Rain was clean and effortless. It was a dance of opposites, brute force versus discipline. Finally, Kaeldar managed to land a solid hit on Rain's shoulder. The human slid across the arena floor, leaving a trail of dust. The aliens cheered wildly, their pride briefly returning. But as the smoke cleared, Rain stood again. He wiped the dirt from his face, his mouth curling into a small smile. "Not bad," he said quietly. That small moment of confidence made Kaeldar hesitate for the first time. He saw no fear in the human's eyes. Instead, he saw experience, a warrior who had fought not for pride, but for survival. The colonel's face hardened. He could see it now, too. This wasn't luck. The human fought with purpose. The crowd began to quiet once more. The sound of their breath filled the silence as both warriors stood across from each other, their bodies bruised, but their will unbroken. Kaeldar clenched his fists, his pride crumbling bit by bit. "You should have fallen by now," he said, disbelief in his voice. Rain's tone was calm and steady. "You mistake pain for weakness. Humans learn from both." Those words echoed in Kaeldar's head as he charged again, screaming in fury. Rain waited until the very last second, then moved, swift, precise, unstoppable. His counterpunch landed straight on Kaeldar's chest. The sound was like thunder. The alien flew backward, crashing into the arena wall. The crowd froze. For several seconds, no one made a sound. Kaeldar coughed, gasping for air, his body trembling. He tried to stand but couldn't. Rain slowly approached, his shadow falling over the fallen warrior. "It's not over," Kaeldar whispered weakly. "I can still fight." Rain looked down at him with respect. "Then stand, because I don't fight the weak." Those words, said with no anger, cut deeper than any weapon. The crowd erupted again, but this time it wasn't laughter. It was confusion, disbelief, maybe even admiration. The human turned and walked back to his corner as the horn sounded the end of round 2. Colonel Varkin's claws dug into the railing until sparks flew. His pride was burning, not because his student had fallen, but because deep down he realized something terrifying. The human was holding back. Rain Carter wasn't fighting to prove anything. He was fighting to teach a lesson, and Varkan had just begun to understand what it meant. As the sun disappeared behind the distant mountains, one thing was certain across Crozzer. The human had changed everything. The trial was no longer about strength. It was about truth, and the aliens were not ready for what was coming next. The night on Crozzer was heavy with silence after the second round. The once roaring crowd had turned quiet, their pride wounded, their belief shaken. The great arena, which had witnessed countless battles, now stood as a monument of confusion. The alien soldiers, once sure of their superiority, whispered among themselves. Could a human truly rival a Crozarian warrior? Colonel Varkan sat alone in his command chamber above the arena, staring through the glass down at the human, who now rested on the battlefield floor. His golden eyes burned with frustration. His best student, Kaeldar, had fallen twice. It was not only a loss of power, it was a wound to his pride. For decades, Varkan had believed Crozarians were the peak of evolution, the perfect warriors shaped by centuries of war. But that belief now trembled because of one quiet, calm human. He clenched his fists, remembering his own training as a young soldier, the brutal drills, the pain, the endless battles. He had fought for pride and honor. He had crushed every opponent who dared challenge him. Until now, the human had not fought for pride. He had fought for something else, something Varkan couldn't yet understand. Down below, Rain Carter sat cross-legged on the ground, his combat suit still dusty from the last round. He was breathing slowly, his heart steady, his eyes calm. He had seen arrogance like this before, on 100 battlefields across space. The aliens were powerful, yes, but they had forgotten what real strength meant. Real strength came from struggle, from failure, from pain, and humans had known those things since the beginning of time. Across the arena, Kaeldar sat inside the med bay, surrounded by glowing machines that healed his wounds. His body was strong, but his pride hurt more than his bones. He stared at the floor, replaying the fight over and over in his mind. Every dodge, every counter, every silent look from that human, it all made him feel something strange. Not anger, not hate, but curiosity. How could someone weaker be stronger at the same time? Varkan entered the med bay, his heavy boots echoing across the metal floor. "You brought shame to your people," he said coldly. Kaeldar lowered his head. "I underestimated him," he admitted. "He fights differently. It's not about strength. It's silence." Varkan barked, slamming his fist against the wall. A human cannot surpass a Cruzarian. Do you hear me? This is not over. You will fight him again, and this time, you will end it. Kaeldar looked up slowly. His eyes filled not with anger, but with doubt. And if he's stronger than we think? Varkan's jaw tightened. Then we destroy the idea before it spreads. He turned and walked out, his pride refusing to bend. But deep inside, a small part of him feared the truth. What if the human wasn't just stronger, but wiser? The next morning, the arena buzzed again with tension. Word had spread across the planet. Every Cruzarian soldier wanted to see the human fight again. For them, it wasn't just entertainment anymore. It was a challenge to their identity. As Rain stepped back into the ring, thousands of eyes watched him. He looked small compared to Kaeldar, who now stood renewed and burning with alien energy. But there was something in Rain's calm posture that made the air feel heavy. He wasn't nervous. He wasn't angry. He was focused. Colonel Varkan stood above, his face carved in stone. "This is the final test," he said quietly. "Show him what it means to be Cruzarian." The horn sounded. Kaeldar charged again, but this time his attacks were smarter, more focused. He wasn't just using rage anymore. He was thinking. Rain noticed it and smiled slightly. The student was learning. Every movement became a test of skill and will. Kaeldar's strikes cut through the air like lightning, but Rain parried each one with careful precision. Their fight was faster, harder, and sharper than before. The ground cracked under their feet, energy waves rippling out with each blow. The aliens watching leaned forward, unable to look away. For the first time, it didn't look like a fight between alien and human. It looked like a fight between equals. Sweat ran down Kaeldar's face. "Why don't you fall?" he shouted between strikes. "What keeps you standing?" Rain blocked another blow and replied softly, "Because I've already fallen before. Many times. And I learned how to stand again." The words hit Kaeldar like a second punch. His rage started to fade, replaced by something else, respect. Varkan's eyes widened as he saw it. His student wasn't fighting for pride anymore. He was fighting to understand. That realization made Varkan furious. "No," he roared from the stands. "You fight for victory, not wisdom." But his words were lost in the noise of the crowd. The aliens could feel something shifting in their hearts. The human's endurance, his control, his calmness. It was something beautiful, something they had forgotten. Kaeldar attacked again, but this time not with hate. He moved with purpose, his strikes more disciplined. Rain nodded as he blocked each one. "Good," he said quietly. "Now you're fighting with your mind, not your pride." The two clashed one final time, and the shockwave shook the entire arena. When the dust cleared, both stood still, breathing heavily, eyes locked. Kaeldar smiled faintly. "You're different, human." Rain nodded once. "So are you." The horn sounded, ending the round. There was no winner announced. There didn't need to be. The crowd erupted, not in anger this time, but in respect. Even those who had mocked the human before now looked at him with awe. Colonel Varkan turned and stormed away, his pride bleeding deeper with every cheer that wasn't for his kind. In that moment, as the suns rose high above the arena, something had changed forever. The aliens had seen not just a human fighter, but the spirit of humanity itself. The strength to endure, to adapt, to rise again. And in the silence that followed, Kaeldar looked up at the sky and whispered, "Maybe we were wrong all along." The arena of Crozar was quiet now, but the tension hung thick in the air. The aliens who had witnessed the first two rounds whispered among themselves, their voices filled with disbelief. Humans were supposed to be weak, fragile, easy to crush. Yet Rain Carter had not only survived, but had proven himself equal, perhaps even superior, to the best of Cruzarian warriors. Colonel Varkan paced back and forth in his private chamber, claws clicking on the metal floor, his mind unable to accept what he had seen. His best student, Kaeldar, had fought with all his might, using every skill and secret technique he had learned under Varkan's ruthless training. Yet, he had been matched by a human. Varkan's pride was wounded deeper than any scar he had ever earned in battle. "Impossible," he muttered under his breath, staring at the hollow screen replaying every strike, every dodge, every counter. No human could survive like that. It defies logic. Meanwhile, down in the arena, Rain wiped the dust from his armor, adjusting his stance as the faint blue glow of his suit pulsed. It wasn't just his skill that had carried him through the rounds. His suit had kinetic shielding and reaction boosters, human technology designed not for offense, but for survival and precision. But even without the tech, Rain's mind and reflexes were sharp, honed through years of survival in far harsher wars than any alien could imagine. Kaeldar, recovering in the med bay, was restless. His muscles healed, but his mind replayed the fight again and again. The human's calmness, his ability to read attacks and anticipate every move, was unlike anything Kaeldar had experienced. He had always believed power came from rage, strength, and speed. Now he questioned everything. How can someone so small, so weak by our standards, move with such precision? He muttered. His voice was quiet, but the medics paused, realizing even Kaeldar, the perfect student, was shaken. Varkan entered the med bay without knocking, his eyes blazing. "I told you to destroy him, Kaeldar. You failed," he said, his voice low and dangerous. Kaeldar lifted his head, meeting the colonel's gaze. "Sir, I did not fail," he replied, voice steady. "I fought, but he's different. He fights with something more than power." Varkan's claws tightened, leaving scratches on the railing. "Different? That human is an anomaly, nothing more. Your pride, your honor, it will teach you to fight without mercy next time. He must fall." Kaeldar stared silently, unsure whether to argue or obey. The thought that humans could teach anything, let alone surpass the Khazarians, was a seed of doubt that began to grow. Outside the med bay, the arena's energy fields hummed as preparations for the next round began. Thousands of alien spectators filled the stands, their eyes fixed on the center where both warriors would return. Rumors had spread quickly. Even junior cadets whispered, "He's a human, yet he survived Kaeldar's full assault. Could it be true? Are humans stronger than we believed?" Rain stepped back into the arena, his calm presence commanding attention without effort. He scanned Kaeldar, assessing his movements, reading his energy. The alien student had grown more cautious, his attacks less reckless, more calculated. Rain understood immediately. Kaeldar had learned something, and the colonel had not realized the human's influence had already begun. The horn sounded. Kaeldar charged, faster than before, but his strikes were deliberate, testing Rain's response. Each blow struck with precision, yet Rain moved as if time slowed, parrying and dodging, his reactions sharp, almost instinctive. The aliens watching leaned forward, their mouths open in astonishment. They had seen strength, power, and skill before, but this was something else. Kaeldar's body glowed with alien energy, red and fierce, yet Rain's suit absorbed most of the impact, the blue glow acting as a silent counterbalance to the rage-fueled attacks. The human's eyes never wavered, and with each dodge, Kaeldar's confidence faltered. "You are learning," Rain said quietly, just loud enough for Kaeldar to hear. "You are strong, but strength alone is not enough." Kaeldar froze mid-strike, startled. No one had ever spoken to him like that, not even Varkan. "What do you mean?" he hissed, his mind racing. "You think only force matters," Rain replied, taking a careful step forward. "But control, patience, observation, these win battles before they even begin." The word struck Kaeldar deeply. His chest heaved with energy, but the pride that once blinded him now flickered. The crowd was silent, sensing the shift in the arena's atmosphere. Varkan, standing high above in the command chamber, felt a cold chill run down his spine. Something inside him stirred uneasily. He had trained Kaeldar to be invincible, yet here was a human teaching his student lessons he had never thought to give. Kaeldar attacked again, more controlled this time, his strikes precise, but less furious. Rain matched each move perfectly, his counters flowing naturally. The two moved like shadows, fast, sharp, and almost seamless. Sparks flew, and the ground cracked beneath their feet as the duel escalated. Then, with a sudden motion, Rain sidestepped Kaeldar's charging strike and placed a light but firm punch to his opponent's side. The blow was enough to unbalance Kaeldar, causing him to stumble back. Silence fell across the arena. The spectators, the medics, even Varkon himself, were frozen, unable to speak. Kael'thar's pride hurt worse than his body. He had been bested, not by brute strength, but by the quiet intelligence of a human soldier. Rain stepped back, his chest rising and falling steadily, not gloating, not mocking. "Stand if you can," he said softly. "Fight if you want. I respect strength, but weakness teaches nothing." Kael'thar's hands trembled slightly. For the first time, he considered a new way of fighting, a new way of thinking. Even Varkon realized the truth. This human was not just strong. He was wise, disciplined, and unshakable. The horn sounded, ending the round. Both warriors took a moment to catch their breath. The crowd erupted, but this time their cheers were mixed with awe, respect, and a strange sense of hope. Something had changed in Crozzer. The balance of pride, power, and belief was shifting. Rain Carter had proven humans were not just survivors. They were warriors, strategists, and teachers. Colonel Varkin's pride was wounded, Kael'thar's perspective forever altered, and the alien soldiers realized that strength alone would no longer define the future. The human had not only survived another round, he had rewritten what it meant to fight on Crozzer, and the legend was only beginning. The suns of Crozzer rose slowly over the massive arena, casting long shadows across the cracked ground where dust and energy trails from the previous battles still lingered. The aliens were restless. Whispers moved like wildfire among the crowd. "He's human, and yet he fights like one of us." Even the youngest cadets dared to speak of him with a mix of fear and admiration. Colonel Varkon stood above the arena, his claws gripping the railings so tightly that sparks flew from the metal. His golden eyes glimmered with fury and disbelief. Kael'thar, his once unbeatable student, stood in the center, breathing heavily, muscles tensed, eyes fixed on the human who had shattered everything he believed. The human, Captain Rain Carter, was calm as ever, his blue-lit armor reflecting the dawn. His stance was relaxed but ready. He wasn't just here to fight. He was here to endure, to teach, to show that strength was more than muscle and energy. The horn sounded again, signaling the start of the next round. Kael'thar roared, his red energy aura flaring brighter than ever. He charged with everything he had, faster, stronger, smarter. Each strike was a calculated attack, designed to test Rain's limits. The arena shook as Kael'thar slammed his fists into the ground, sending energy ripples outward. Rain moved like water, flowing around each attack, never panicking, never rushing. He dodged, blocked, and countered with precision. Every movement showed a blend of instinct, training, and patience. The crowd leaned forward, holding their breath. This was no longer a simple fight. It was a lesson in the true meaning of power. Kael'thar's strikes began to change. Where before they were fueled by pride and rage, now they were sharper, deliberate, and almost elegant. He was learning from a human's calm approach, yet he resisted admitting it. "Why don't you fall?" Kael'thar shouted mid-attack, frustration dripping from every word. Rain blocked another punch, stepping lightly to the side. "Because I've learned to rise," he said softly. "Every failure makes you stronger, if you pay attention." Kael'thar's chest heaved. He had never heard such words in battle. Even Varkon, watching from above, felt a knot of unease in his stomach. Could it be that humans had not only strength but wisdom too? The two clashed again, energy lighting the arena like a storm. Sparks flew, the ground cracked, and the echoes of impact rolled across the stands. Kael'thar struck with a spinning kick. Rain dodged, countering with a light but precise strike that sent Kael'thar stumbling back. The crowd gasped. No one had ever seen Kael'thar push back so easily. His energy aura flickered, red rage clashing with his growing curiosity about this human. "You are different," Kael'thar muttered, trying to maintain his composure. "I have never faced anyone like you." Rain's eyes softened slightly, his calm expression unchanging. "You are strong, Kael'thar. Stronger than I expected. But strength alone cannot win a battle," he said. Kael'thar growled, unleashing a series of rapid strikes with his glowing fists, each one designed to overwhelm. Rain danced around them, his body moving with uncanny precision. Then, with a sudden, unexpected motion, Rain struck a point just below Kael'thar's ribs, enough to unbalance him but not to harm. The alien stumbled, caught off guard, and the crowd fell silent once again. Varkan's claws dug into the railing. He could not deny what he saw. His student, trained to perfection, had been tested and pushed to the edge by a human. Impossible, he muttered under his breath, his pride shaken. Kael'thar took a step back, breath ragged, his glowing energy flickering as doubt crept in. Why don't you fight like the others?" he asked. Rain's voice was calm but firm. "Because I fight to endure, to adapt, to understand. Pride alone cannot teach you anything." Kael'thar's body tensed. For the first time, he realized that every lesson Varkan had taught him about power and dominance was only part of the truth. Strength was not enough. Patience, observation, and the will to rise after every fall mattered more. The alien launched another attack, but his strikes were slower now, careful, calculated. Rain met each one, countering with the precision of a soldier who had fought battles far beyond what Kael'thar could imagine. The energy from each strike lit the arena like fire, dust and sparks swirling around them in a chaotic ballet. Kael'thar's frustration turned to awe. He felt his pride and arrogance clash with this growing respect. Every dodge, every counter, every calm step of the human was a lesson in control. Even the crowd could sense the change. Their cheers were now mixed with disbelief and admiration. They were watching history. The battle reached a crescendo when Kael'thar unleashed his ultimate move, a spinning strike that had defeated countless opponents in the past. Rain's eyes narrowed, calculating, reading the pattern. At the final moment, he sidestepped and delivered a perfectly timed elbow that sent Kael'thar sliding across the arena floor. Dust and sparks rose around him. He tried to stand but faltered, chest heaving. The horn sounded, ending the round. The crowd erupted into a chaotic mix of cheers and stunned silence. Varkan turned away, his pride wounded, yet his mind racing with a dangerous thought. This human was not just strong. He was teaching his students lessons that no Khazarian had ever learned. Kael'thar looked up at Rain, his glowing eyes now filled with curiosity and respect instead of rage. "You are something else," he whispered. Rain offered a small nod. "And you can learn. That is why you fight well now." As the suns climbed higher, casting golden light across the arena, the Khazarian warriors realized something profound. The balance of strength, pride, and wisdom was shifting. Humans were no longer weak, no longer inferior. They were warriors, strategists, and teachers. And in the center of the arena, Captain Rain Carter stood tall, calm, and unshakable, a symbol of endurance and intellect that would forever change the way Crozzer saw the galaxy. The battle was far from over, but the legend of the human had already begun. The arena of Crozzer was silent, the dust from the previous battles still swirling in the air as the twin suns glared down from the sky. The crowd of alien spectators had been silenced by what they had witnessed in the last rounds. A human had survived Kael'thar's full power, dodged strikes faster than any alien could imagine, and countered with skill that left even the most experienced warriors in shock. Colonel Varkan stood in the command chamber, his claws gripping the railing so tightly that the metal creaked. His golden eyes burned with anger and disbelief. Kael'thar, his best student, was kneeling in the center of the arena, energy flickering weakly around his armor, his chest heaving. The pride of the Khazarian Empire, the warrior who had never known defeat, was finally realizing what many others were only beginning to see. A human could not only survive but surpass him. The horn sounded, signaling the next round, the final confrontation. Kael'thar rose, energy surging, but this time it was not pure rage. It was desperation mixed with doubt. Rain Carter stood calm, as always, his eyes steady, scanning his opponent for patterns, weaknesses, and intentions. The crowd watched with bated breath, the tension almost unbearable. Kael'thar charged, faster and stronger than ever, his glowing fists arcing through the air with deadly precision. Each strike caused shockwaves, making the ground tremble beneath their feet. Rain moved like water, flowing around each attack, using the smallest openings to maintain his defense while conserving energy. Every strike Kael'thar threw was matched with a dodge or block that seemed almost effortless. The alien crowd gasped as their champion, who had never faltered, was pushed to his limits. Sweat dripped from Kael'thar's brow, and his energy aura flickered with every attack. He failed to land. Varkan's eyes narrowed. He could see the truth unfolding before him. His student, his pride, was struggling, not because he was weak, but because this human was unlike anything he had ever faced. Kael'thar unleashed a flurry of strikes, each more powerful than the last, hoping to overwhelm Rain. But Rain anticipated, countered, and adapted to every blow. His suit glowed faintly blue, kinetic energy rippling across its surface, absorbing impacts while amplifying his agility. Then, with a calm but decisive motion, Rain sidestepped Kael'thar's most powerful strike and delivered a clean, precise punch to the alien's side. Kael'thar stumbled, his armor sparking, and fell to the ground with a heavy thud. The arena went silent. No one moved. The Cruzarian warriors could not believe what they had just seen. The once unbeatable Kael'thar lay on the floor, defeated, not through brute force, but through patience, skill, and the quiet strength of a human. Varkan's claws dug into the railing, leaving scratches on the metal, his chest heaving. Pride and anger warred within him. This was not just a loss of a duel. It was a crack in everything he had believed about humans and his empire. Kael'thar struggled to rise, his body trembling, but Rain stepped forward and extended a hand. "Stand," he said simply. "You are strong, Kael'thar, but you are learning that strength is more than just power." Kael'thar hesitated, looking into the calm eyes of the human who had bested him. He saw no mockery, no pride, only respect. Slowly, he took the offered hand, and Rain helped him to his feet. The alien stood, his body bruised, but his mind awakening to a truth he had never considered. The crowd erupted into a mixture of awe and disbelief. Whispers filled the stands. He bested Kael'thar. The human, he's incredible." Even the younger cadets, who had only dreamed of fighting humans, felt hope and inspiration for the first time. Colonel Varkan turned sharply away, pacing, his mind racing. He could not deny what he had seen. The human had done what no alien had believed possible. Kael'thar, now standing beside Rain, nodded slowly. "You have taught me something today," he admitted quietly. "Not just how to fight, but how to think, how to endure, how to rise." Rain smiled faintly. "And you will rise again," he said, "stronger, wiser, and better prepared." The horn sounded, marking the end of the final round. No winner was announced because the outcome was clear. The human had prevailed, not by overpowering, but by outthinking, outlasting, and outliving the arrogance of the alien elite. The arena, once filled with jeers and laughter at the human's audacity, now echoed with a newfound respect. Varkan clenched his fists. Knowing this was a turning point he could not reverse. His empire's perception of humans had changed forever. Kael'thar looked around at the stunned crowd. We underestimated them," he said softly. The words carried weight, spreading like wildfire through the audience. Rain nodded, placing a hand on Kael'thar's shoulder in a gesture of camaraderie. "Never underestimate anyone," he said simply. "Even the smallest, the weakest, the ones you think you know. Strength is more than size, more than power. It is the will to endure, to learn, and to rise again." The suns of Kraza shone brighter now, casting long golden and red shadows across the arena floor. A human had defeated the greatest alien warrior, and the legend of Captain Rain Carter was solidified. The aliens, from the youngest cadets to the seasoned warriors, began to see humanity differently. Not weak, not fragile, but strong, adaptable, and unbreakable. And for Colonel Varkan, the lesson was painful but undeniable. Pride could be shattered, legends could fall, and the galaxy's rules could be rewritten by someone who fought with intelligence, patience, and unwavering resolve. Kael'thar stood beside Rain, looking up at the skies of Kraza. "Perhaps we were wrong," he whispered. Rain's calm eyes met his. "Perhaps," he said, "the arena had witnessed the fall of a champion, the humility of a colonel, and the rise of a human legend. From that day forward, no alien would ever doubt the strength of humanity again." The story of the human who defeated Kael'thar spread across the galaxy, a tale of endurance, intelligence, and the true meaning of strength. The battle was over, but its impact would shape the future of Kraza for generations to come. The aftermath of the battle left the arena of Crozzer in a strange silence, broken only by the murmurs of astonished spectators. The dust hung in the air like a haze, shimmering in the twin suns' light. Captain Rain Carter stood at the center, calm and unyielding, his armor scratched but his posture firm. Kaeldar, once the pride of the Crozerian army, leaned heavily against the arena wall, chest heaving, his glowing energy flickering weakly. He had survived the human strike, yes, but the lesson he had learned burned deeper than any wound. Every movement, every word from Rain had shifted something inside him. For the first time, he saw humans not as fragile creatures, but as warriors, smart, disciplined, and unbreakable. The young cadets whispered among themselves, their eyes wide with wonder. He actually survived, one said. Not only survived, he dominated. The realization spread quickly. Humans were no longer a curiosity. They were a threat, a mystery, and perhaps even a teacher. Colonel Varkon stood in the command chamber above, his golden eyes narrow, jaw tight. Pride and fury warred within him. His best student, Kaeldar, had been humbled, and he had watched it happen. He could not deny what he had seen, yet he could not accept it fully either. He had built his entire life around the idea that Crozerians were the strongest in the galaxy, and now a human had shattered that belief, not through brute force alone, but through intelligence, patience, and endurance. In the med bay, Kaeldar replayed the fight over and over in his mind. Every dodge, every counter, every calm word of the human haunted him. His pride told him to reject it, to refuse the lesson, but his instincts whispered something different. There was truth in Rain's words, a power and restraint that Kaeldar had never experienced. He turned to one of the medics. "Prepare me," he said quietly. "I will train again, but not just to fight. I want to understand him, understand humans." The medic looked up in surprise. "Do you mean study their tactics?" Kaeldar nodded. "Yes. I need to know why one human can stand against all we are." Outside the arena, the spectators slowly began to disperse, but their whispers followed them. Tales of the human's endurance, his calm, and his intelligence spread quickly. Even the veterans, who had fought countless battles, spoke of the human with a mixture of awe and fear. Colonel Varkon watched from above as his empire began to shift. The soldiers who had once laughed at the idea of a human warrior now whispered in secret, sharing observations and trying to predict what Rain might do next. "It is not just his strength," one young cadet said to another. "It is his mind. He sees everything before it happens." Varkon's fists clenched. He realized the seeds of doubt had been planted in his own ranks. He needed to act quickly before admiration turned into defiance. But even he could not ignore what had occurred. His pride had been bruised, and his student's worldview had already changed. Kaeldar, standing now fully healed, looked toward the arena where Rain rested. He approached slowly, unsure of how the human would respond. Rain looked up and offered a small nod, a gesture of respect without words. "You fought well," Rain said softly, "and you learned something important today." Kaeldar's eyes glimmered with understanding. "Yes," he whispered. "I see now. Strength alone is not enough. Control, patience, and understanding, these make a warrior truly powerful." Rain smiled faintly. "And you have all of it. You just needed to learn to see it differently." Meanwhile, across the planet, word of the battle spread. Traders, diplomats, and scouts carried the story to distant colonies. Humans were no longer underestimated. They had proven that even one could stand against the mightiest of Crozerian warriors and survive. The ripple effect began almost immediately. Younger soldiers began to study human tactics in secret, sharing strategies and insights in hushed tones. They experimented with new techniques, learning to balance brute strength with patience and observation. Even older, battle-hardened veterans found themselves questioning the methods they had relied on for decades. Colonel Varkon, realizing the change sweeping through his army, summoned Kaeldar to the command chamber. "You have been humbled," he said, his voice low and dangerous. "But do not forget, Kaeldar, that strength must always dominate. Respect cannot replace power." Kaeldar met his master's gaze, but did not lower his head. Strength alone is not enough, Colonel, he said firmly. I have seen what humans can do. I have learned that there's more to being a warrior than just power. Varkan's claws clicked against the floor as he considered the words. Inside, he knew Kaeldar was right. Change was coming, whether he wanted it or not. That night, as the twin moons rose over Krazer, the arena lay empty, yet its presence lingered in the minds of everyone who had witnessed the human's performance. Rain sat quietly in his corner, observing the stars, thinking not of victory but of preparation. He knew the coming battles would not be easy. Aliens across Krazer would train harder, adapt faster, and challenge him in ways he had never faced. But he was ready. Kaeldar, walking beside him now, had become more than an opponent. He was a student, a witness to human endurance, and perhaps a future ally. And in the hearts of the young cadets and soldiers who had seen him fight, a new belief was born. The humans were not weak, that they could endure, adapt, and overcome anything. The seeds of change had been planted in Krazer that day, and no one, not even Colonel Varkan, could stop them. For Captain Rain Carter, the human who had faced the greatest alien warrior, the challenge had only just begun. The arena had been a proving ground, but the true battle lay in what would come next, a test of endurance, strategy, and the will to continue standing even when the galaxy expected you to fall. And as the sun set behind the horizon, casting long shadows across the planet, one truth became clear to all who had witnessed the fight. Humans were not just survivors. They were warriors, teachers, and the spark of change that would reshape Krazer forever. The days following the legendary battle were filled with tension and whispers across Krazer. Soldiers, cadets, and even veteran warriors could not stop talking about what they had seen. A human had faced Kaeldar, the Empire's strongest warrior, and survived. Not just survived, but taught a lesson without raising his voice or displaying unnecessary pride. Colonel Varkan, once the unchallenged authority of the Krazarian military, paced his command chamber endlessly. His mind was a storm of anger, disbelief, and unease. The pride he had built for decades, the belief that Krazarians were the ultimate warriors in the galaxy, was cracking. And what worried him most was that he could see the change spreading among his soldiers. Young cadets who had once trained only to emulate the strength and arrogance of Kaeldar were now sneaking away to study humans, trying to understand their tactics, their patience, their calm. Even the seasoned soldiers, hardened through centuries of battle, began to question their methods. Kaeldar had returned to training, but his approach was different. Gone was the blind rage that had once fueled his attacks. Instead, he practiced with focus, analyzing movements, predicting reactions, and considering strategy over raw force. The human's calm had left a mark on him deeper than any injury. He sought Rain not as an enemy, but as a teacher of a new way to fight, a way that combined strength with understanding. Rain, meanwhile, was not idle. He spent hours studying the alien combat styles, not with fear or arrogance, but with curiosity. Every movement Kaeldar made, every strike he observed, was an opportunity to anticipate, to prepare, and to learn. The human knew that the Krazarians would not rest. They would adapt, evolve, and challenge him in ways no ordinary opponent could. Yet he was ready, as he had always been, for the fight to come. Across the Empire, whispers of rebellion began to stir. Not open defiance, but a quiet questioning of the old ways. The cadets shared strategies in secret, experimenting with combinations of strength and patience, inspired by what they had seen. Veterans who had trained under Varkan's strict methods began to allow their students more freedom, more choice in their training, realizing that rigidity could no longer dominate the battlefield. The colonel noticed the shift, and his anger grew. Authority and pride were not supposed to be questioned, yet he could feel the change, subtle but undeniable, like a ripple spreading across his empire. He summoned Kaeldar to his chamber. "You have allowed this human to corrupt your mind," he said, voice low and dangerous. "You will forget what you have learned and focus only on Krazarian methods." Kaeldar stood tall, no longer trembling from pride or fear. "I will not forget," he replied calmly. "He has shown me that strength is more than power, that patience, observation, and understanding can surpass force. That is not corruption, Colonel, it is evolution." Varkan's eyes narrowed, fury and fear mixing in his chest. Evolution, he spat. You speak as if one human can teach you more than decades of Khazarian training. Perhaps one human can, Kildar said, his voice steady. Perhaps one human can change the way we fight, think, and survive. The colonel's claws clicked on the floor as he stepped back, realizing the truth he had tried to deny. Change was coming, whether he wanted it or not. Across Krazer, the cadets watched their heroes differently now. Kildar, once untouchable, was no longer a symbol of absolute power, but of growth and learning. Rain Carter had become more than a human soldier. He was a symbol, a spark of inspiration that challenged everything the Empire believed about strength and honor. The arena, which had been the center of all battles and demonstrations, became a place of quiet reflection. Veterans trained harder, but they also observed, taking notes from the smallest movements of cadets, trying to adapt to this new philosophy of patience combined with power. Rain's influence spread like wildfire, not through orders or commands, but through observation and example. Even Varkan's loyalists began to question themselves, realizing that the Empire they had once trusted blindly might not be prepared for what was coming. One evening, Kildar approached Rain in the empty arena, the twin suns low in the sky, casting long shadows. I want to learn, he said simply. Teach me what you know. Show me how humans fight and survive. Rain nodded, his calm eyes reflecting the fading light. Then you must let go of pride, he said. You must be willing to learn, to fail, and to rise stronger every time. Kildar understood immediately. It was not just about fighting. It was about a mindset, a way to approach every battle, every challenge, every opponent. Together, they began to train in silence, the alien learning from the human observing, adjusting, and guiding. Across the Empire, the whispers of rebellion grew louder, though still quiet and cautious. The seeds planted by Rain's presence were taking root. Aliens who had never questioned the old ways now considered a new path, one where strength was measured not just by force but by strategy, patience, and endurance. Colonel Varkan, sensing the growing movement, realized that he must act if he wanted to maintain control. Yet even he could not deny the truth. The human had changed everything. The cadets, the warriors, and even Kildar himself were beginning to see the galaxy differently. Strength alone was no longer enough. Understanding, adaptation, and respect were becoming equally vital. The sun set fully over Krazer, casting long crimson shadows across the arena. Rain and Kildar stood side by side, preparing for what was coming next. The planet, the Empire, and even the Colonel himself had been altered by a single human's presence. The seeds of change had been planted, and the galaxy would feel their impact for generations to come. Captain Rain Carter had not only survived Krazer, he had begun to transform it, and nothing would ever be the same. The atmosphere on Krazer had changed completely in the days following the legendary fights. The arena, once a place of pride and dominance, now felt different, charged with tension, curiosity, and unease. Every soldier, every cadet, every veteran who had witnessed Captain Rain Carter's unmatched skill carried the memory of his calm, precise, unyielding presence. Even the youngest cadets, who had never believed a human could stand against Kildar, now trained in secret, attempting to emulate the human's combination of patience, observation, and adaptability. Colonel Varkan remained in his command chamber, pacing restlessly. His claws dug into the railing as he replayed the fights over and over in his mind. Kildar, his prized student, had been defeated, not by superior force but by intelligence, discipline, and the quiet resilience of a human warrior. The realization gnawed at him. Khazarians had always believed that pride, strength, and aggression defined a warrior. Now that belief had been challenged, and for the first time, Varkan felt the weight of uncertainty. Kildar had recovered physically, but the lessons of the human lingered in his mind. He could not dismiss the truth of what he had experienced. He had fought with all his might, but it had never been enough. Patience, strategy, and control, qualities he had previously overlooked, were just as important as raw power. That truth unsettled him deeply, yet it also ignited a spark of curiosity. The arena prepared for the next confrontation, the humans and Cruzarians alike knowing that this battle would be different. Captain Rain Carter entered first, his armor glowing faintly, his calm demeanor commanding attention without effort. Kaeldar followed, his energy aura pulsing brighter than ever, but tempered by thought and observation rather than unchecked rage. The crowd, filled with thousands of alien spectators, leaned forward in anticipation. The horn sounded, signaling the start of the round. Kaeldar advanced immediately, launching a barrage of strikes, faster and more calculated than before. Rain responded effortlessly, blocking, dodging, and countering with fluid movements honed by years of survival and disciplined training. Sparks flew from each clash, and the ground beneath them cracked from the force of their combined power. The audience watched in stunned silence, unable to look away. Kaeldar's strikes were no longer fueled by pride alone. They were precise, deliberate, and controlled. Rain recognized this immediately. The alien was learning, adapting, and becoming a more formidable opponent. But Rain himself was not merely defending. He was teaching. Each movement, each counter, each subtle redirection of Kaeldar's attacks demonstrated not just skill, but a philosophy of combat. Endurance, observation, and intelligence could overcome even the greatest strength. Kaeldar stumbled slightly from a swift counter, his pride wounded more than his body. How are you still calm?" he demanded, panting. "You do not fear." Rain stepped lightly, placing a hand briefly on Kaeldar's shoulder to redirect his momentum. "I have learned that fear is only dangerous if you let it control you," he said quietly. "Strength without control is meaningless." Kaeldar's body tensed, energy flickering around him as he processed the words. The lesson burned deeper than any strike. Across the arena, whispers spread. Even veteran warriors who had fought countless battles began to see a new dimension to strength, one they had never considered. Colonel Varkin's claws clenched, and a low growl escaped him. "This human, he is changing everything," he muttered. Kaeldar pressed forward again, more carefully this time. Each strike was precise, meant to test Rain's reactions, meant to learn. Rain met each attack, countering subtly, giving feedback through motion rather than words. The clash continued, the energy from each impact rippling across the arena, tearing dust and sparks into the air. Slowly, Kaeldar began to understand the human's approach. Patience, timing, and observation, these were as powerful as any strike. He felt a strange mix of awe and frustration. For the first time in his life, he realized that victory was not about overwhelming force, but about balance. Kaeldar's energy flared as he attempted one of his strongest attacks, a spinning assault designed to end any opponent instantly. Rain's eyes followed the rhythm of his movement, calculating and precise. At the last moment, he sidestepped and redirected Kaeldar's momentum, delivering a counter that sent the alien stumbling backward. The crowd gasped. For the first time, Kaeldar had been unbalanced so completely. Dust rose around him as he struggled to recover. Rain did not pursue. He stood calm, allowing the lesson to resonate. "Control your pride," he said softly. "Your strength is wasted if your mind does not guide it." Kaeldar clenched his fists, chest heaving. His pride burned, but he recognized the truth. Every strike, every dodge, every subtle movement taught him a new way to fight, a new way to think. The horn sounded, ending the round. The spectators erupted, but this time it was not the loud, boastful cheers of blind triumph. It was a mixture of awe, respect, and contemplation. Varkon turned away, his pride bruised, his mind racing. He realized that Captain Rain Carter had done more than survive. He had reshaped the understanding of strength, discipline, and strategy across the Empire. Kaeldar, breathing heavily, looked at Rain with a new perspective. You have shown me more than just how to fight," he admitted. "You have shown me a path I did not know existed." Rain nodded, a faint smile on his face. "And it is a path that any warrior can follow, if they are willing to learn." As the twin suns set over Crozzer, the shadows of the arena stretched long and red across the planet. A human had stood against the greatest alien warrior and emerged not just unbroken, but transformative. The seeds of change had been sown, not with force, but with patience, wisdom, and endurance. And in the hearts of every warrior who had witnessed the battle, a quiet truth began to take root. Humanity was not weak, and the galaxy would never be the same again. Captain Rain Carter had proven that the strongest warriors were not those who struck hardest, but those who endured, adapted, and taught others to rise stronger. The legend continued, and Crozzer would remember this day forever. The planet of Crozzer had changed in ways no one could have anticipated. The arena, once a symbol of pure strength and Crozzerian dominance, now felt alive with tension and possibility. Stories of the human, Captain Rain Carter, and his calm, precise victories over Kaeldar had spread across every corner of the Empire. Cadets whispered in training halls, veterans debated tactics in private chambers, and even the seasoned warriors, who had never feared defeat, now questioned their own abilities. Colonel Varkan, however, remained in his command chamber, pacing endlessly. His pride, once unshakable, had been wounded. Kaeldar, his prize student, had faced the human multiple times, and had learned lessons that no Crozzerian training had ever taught. Varkan's golden eyes were sharp, his jaw tight, as he considered the implications. A single human had not only survived, but had shifted the perceptions of the entire empire. It was more than a threat, it was a revelation. Kaeldar trained in the arena, his movements no longer fueled solely by rage, but by observation and strategy. He analyzed every attack, every counter, every subtle movement of Rain that he could recall. The lessons were harsh, but they burned into his mind like fire. He began to understand that strength alone was no longer enough. Patience, precision, and adaptation were just as vital. Rain, meanwhile, moved silently among the arena floor, preparing for the next confrontation. He observed Kaeldar, anticipating his moves, calculating his strategy, and considering every possible outcome. The human's mind was as sharp as his reflexes, and he knew that the Crozzerians would not remain static. They would evolve, adapt, and challenge him again. The horn sounded, signaling the start of the next round. Kaeldar advanced, his glowing energy flaring brightly, but his movements were controlled, measured. Every strike, every maneuver, was designed to test Rain's reactions, not just to overwhelm him. The audience leaned forward, their eyes wide with anticipation. Sparks flew as energy collided. Dust rose from the arena floor, and the sound of impact echoed across the stands. The clash was fierce but precise, each movement a lesson as much as a strike. Rain responded with calm efficiency, sidestepping, parrying, and redirecting Kaeldar's attacks. His blue-lit armor absorbed impacts and enhanced his agility, but it was his mind that truly guided him. He read Kaeldar's intentions, anticipated his patterns, and moved with the quiet confidence of someone who had fought battles far beyond the scope of this arena. Kaeldar's energy flickered, frustration and awe battling within him. How can you remain so calm?" he demanded, his chest heaving. Rain stepped lightly, blocking a strike and redirecting Kaeldar's momentum. "Because control is stronger than fury," he said softly. "A warrior who cannot control himself will always fall to one who can." Kaeldar's body tensed. He had never been challenged in this way. Pride alone had carried him before, but now he saw the truth in Rain's words. Strength without control was fragile, and arrogance was a vulnerability. The battle continued, each strike more intense than the last. Dust and sparks swirled through the arena as the two warriors clashed. Kaeldar's strikes, though powerful, were met with flawless counters. Rain's movements flowed like water, and his calm presence unnerved the alien warrior more than any blow could. The crowd watched in awe. The fight was no longer simply about victory. It was a lesson in discipline, patience, and strategy. Every young cadet in the stands felt it deep in their bones, the realization that power alone was not enough to dominate. Kaeldar launched his ultimate strike, a spinning assault meant to end the fight in a single blow. Rain's eyes narrowed, his body moving in perfect sync with the human instinct honed over countless battles. At the last second, he sidestepped and delivered a counter that sent Kaeldar sprawling across the arena floor. The ground cracked beneath him, dust and sparks rising in the air. The horn sounded, signaling the end of the round. The crowd erupted, not with jeers or simple applause, but with a mixture of awe, respect, and disbelief. Even the most skeptical veterans found themselves applauding the human's mastery. Kaeldar struggled to rise, his body bruised but his mind open. You have shown me a new way," he admitted, voice low. A way to fight, to survive, to think. Rain nodded. And you will continue to learn. Strength without wisdom is fragile, but strength guided by understanding endures. Across the Empire, whispers of change spread. Soldiers began to train differently, blending brute power with careful observation, patience, and strategy. Cadets experimented with techniques they had never dared to try before. Even the veterans who had relied solely on Crozarian tradition began to adjust their approach. Colonel Varkan, realizing the inevitable, knew that his empire could no longer ignore this human's influence. Kaeldar, standing beside Rain, understood now that he had been taught more than any battle could convey. The twin suns set over Crozar, casting long crimson shadows across the arena. The human warrior had survived, prevailed, and transformed an entire empire's perception of strength in combat. Captain Rain Carter had not only fought, but had changed the very rules of war on Crozar. The legend of the human who defied the strongest alien warrior was now firmly etched into history, and the ripple of change would continue to grow, reshaping Crozar for generations to come.